I remember the day I left home like it was yesterday, even though it's been years, maybe a decade, maybe more. The air was thick with a kind of silence that screams. I could feel my mother's eyes burning into my back as I packed my battered backpack, my hands trembling but my resolve unshaken. It wasn't just about leaving the house. It was about leaving behind every whispered insult, every sneering comment, every time they told me I was wasting my life chasing some ridiculous dream. They called me a fool for studying plants, for believing that urban jungles could be more than concrete and noise. They said I was an embarrassment, a joke, a failure waiting to happen. My family's words echoed in my mind. You'll never make it. You're wasting your talent. You're embarrassing us. But I had no choice. My heart had already made its decision. I couldn't ignore the calling, the wild, untamed voice of the city's hidden greenery that whispered promises of hope and renewal. I was a plant geneticist once. I had a doctorate, a lab, and the kind of reputation that should have opened doors. Instead, I was publicly dismissed and discredited by a renowned research institution for my controversial work, trying to develop genetically resilient urban plants that could thrive in neglected city patches, turning abandoned lots into lush, green sanctuaries. They called me reckless, dangerous even. My ideas were deemed impractical and irresponsible. I was told I was wasting my time chasing fairy tales, that the real science was elsewhere. So I left. I abandoned the sterile corridors, the cold lab equipment, the accolades I never truly cared for. I took to the streets, to the forgotten corners of the city where wild plants grew stubbornly against all odds. I started foraging, learning to read the city's hidden ecology, understanding what thrived in the cracks, in the shadows. It wasn't glamorous. It was primitive, some said. Primitive, but pure. I found purpose in nurturing these tiny ecosystems, in advocating for urban ecology and sustainable foraging. I knew then what I'd known all along. The city was a living, breathing organism, and I was just beginning to understand how to work with it, not against it. But my family, they never saw it that way. They mocked me relentlessly. My father scoffed, "You're just a street rat with a fancy degree." And my mother shook her head, whispering behind closed doors that I'd never amount to anything. I was the black sheep, the one who refused to play by their rules. They saw my work as pointless, primitive, embarrassing. They wanted me to settle down, get a real job, stop chasing fairy tales about weeds and wildflowers. They couldn't understand that I was building a new kind of science rooted in resilience, in the unbreakable spirit of nature fighting back in the urban wasteland. Years passed. I poured myself into my work. I studied, I foraged, I planted, I fought against the skepticism and ridicule. Slowly, quietly, the city began to listen. I collaborated with community groups, city planners, even some environmentalists who saw the potential I'd always known was there. I developed urban green spaces that thrived on community effort, turning neglected parks into lush, vibrant ecosystems. My work gained recognition, slowly, then suddenly. Articles, awards, invitations to speak at conferences. I was no longer just the street forager. I became a pioneer of urban ecology. Then came the breakthrough. A major city adopted my model, transforming abandoned lots into thriving food forests, pollinator gardens, urban jungles teeming with life. My name started appearing in the media, not as a joke, but as a visionary. I had proved what I'd always believed, that sustainable foraging and urban ecology weren't primitive or irrelevant. They were vital for our future. And today, I returned home, not as the failed outsider they once mocked, but as someone who had changed the game. I'd come back to show them what I'd become, to finally face the ghosts of their ridicule. I was invited to speak at a community event, but I knew what I really wanted was to confront the past, those years of doubt, of disdain, of betrayal. The house was exactly as I remembered, small, weathered, filled with the stale scent of regret. My family gathered in the living room, eyes wide with disbelief when I stepped inside. My father looked uncomfortable, my mother's face pale. They had heard the rumors, of course. They'd seen the articles, the photos of lush green spaces in the city's forgotten corners. But seeing it firsthand, the proof of my success, was something else entirely. I took a deep breath and looked at them. "You told me I was wasting my life," I said, my voice steady but filled. "You called me a fool for believing in something that seemed so small, so insignificant. But I never gave up. I kept going, even when everyone told me I was wrong. I stayed true to what I believed in, nature's resilience, urban renewal, hope in the most unlikely places." I paused, feeling the weight of years of pain and perseverance. "Look around. This city, these plants, none of this would be here if I hadn't dared to dream differently. I turned what you mocked as primitive into a force for good. I showed that even in the hardest, most broken places, life finds a way. And I found my purpose in it." Silence hung in the room, thick and heavy. Then my father, a man hardened by years of hard labor, looked away, voice trembling. "We didn't understand," he admitted quietly. "We thought you were wasting your talent. We thought you were chasing nonsense. But maybe we were wrong." Tears welled in my eyes, but I held them back. I didn't need their validation anymore. I'd already proven everything I needed to prove. I'd built a new life, a new legacy, one rooted in resilience, hope, and the belief that even the most dismissed dreams can blossom into something extraordinary. As I left that day, I realized something profound. The greatest victory isn't just the success I achieved, but the liberation from their judgment, the affirmation of my own worth. I had become what I always knew I could be. Not a failure, not an embarrassment, but a pioneer of a movement that's changing the city's story from one of neglect to one of renewal. And that, I learned, is the true power of perseverance. That even when the world dismisses you, if you stay true to your purpose, you can transform rejection into redemption. You can turn the ridiculous into the revolutionary. And in the end, the universe rewards those who dare to believe in what others refuse to see. Because sometimes the greatest success is not just what you build, but the courage to stand tall and say, "I am enough," even when everyone told you you weren't.